this point, we're going to assemble the jumper pin housing. This is supposed to replace some sort of, they say resistor, but this is the housing that needs to have the wire that's here in the kit and this fill plug installed. So I've done this a couple times before, assembled it, and then I decided I'd show a video on how to put it together because it's a little complicated and the instructions are pretty horrible. So anyway, if you look at this housing and you hold it with these two tabs on the sides to the bottom, the two pins that you have to have the wire in are here and here. This one's the filler pin. Found that out of somewhere on the internet that somebody that put these together showed a picture, and these were the two slots that the pins were in, and this was the slot that had the filler in. So to do this, the first thing I did was I had to figure out which way the wire went in, because there's a little spring on the one side of this and a hump on the other. So I realized that these Harley connectors, which they're not just Harley, but these type of connectors, you can remove the pins, insert them, and remove them. And the way you do that is you put the fat part, not the spring part, towards the hole that's in the assembly here. So see this little hole here? And what that does, it allows you to put a pin or a small screwdriver in there, push down on the tab, and the wire will pull out of the back. So you want the hump part of this wire towards that hole. So what I'm going to do to make it easier, I think, is I'm going to kind of start to assemble this, and then I'm going to take the connector apart to finish it, so at least I know which holes they have to go in. So I'll just push these in a little bit. So to remove the back, you push a screwdriver in here, pry it up, and you'll see it pop right out. There's also a rubber piece in there that has to stay with it. That's a sealer. So I'm going to push this all the way down, and then again you'll see in here that there's like a triangle, not a triangle but a pyramid type shape. You can see the little notch here. That's where the little spring thing on the wire goes. If you can see that on the bottom of the wire. So again, the two pins on the right are the ones you want, with the connector with these on the bottom pointing towards you. So I am going to insert these two wires. Doing two at a time is kind of a pain, but I'm sure there's a better way. Basically, you just push them in. One's coming out, and the other one will come out soon. You may need some needle nose pliers or something to push them in there, but there's the pins in there now. You see them? They're protruding. I took some needle nose pliers and I pulled these through a little bit just to make sure they were all the way in. And that's pretty much it. Now this white connector, it's not really a connector, it's a plug, goes in the same way. You'll see that this has a little groove on the top and then a notch side on the bottom. The notch side goes towards the hole. Just push it in there. And then this has to go in this hole here. Probably should have done this first, but you can get it in there. And then you basically just push it back together. Make sure the rubber's in there. And that's pretty much it. You've assembled your jumper housing. Move on to the next step. Okay, the tank's off the bike. I've pre-loosened these screws on the fuel pump assembly. The type of driver you need is a T25 Torx. I've already loosened these up, so I'll just pull these out. 5 bolts on here, or screws. People always complain because I call them bolts even though they're screws. Then you got to wiggle the assembly out. When I originally took this out, I had it out once. It was a little stuck to the tank, so I had to wiggle a little bit. But I got it off without prying anything under it. You just slide it straight up. Towards the end, you got to twist it towards the center. So you got to get all these little straps out of these holes. It's a pretty tight fit, so it may take a little finesse to get it out. Tip it this way, and then you pull the rest of it out, and then that's it. And here's the unit. So I've already drained this, and I had it out of the tank to try and dry it off, so I didn't have to work on it with gas on it, because I didn't really want to. So we'll continue on from here. The first thing we have to do is remove the old fuel level gauge. On this bike, it's a 2007 Sportster 883. The low fuel light warning light was coming on randomly. It was just basically this indicator wasn't working, so that's what prompted me to do this whole thing. I actually bought a replacement part for this to replace it, but then the wife was saying, why don't I have a fuel gauge? So I decided to go with the digital speedometer with the fuel gauge, so now I've got another part. So I will take this off and then come back when I get it off. It's just removing this nut from this plastic stem. If you don't plan on using this again, it doesn't matter if you break that, which it'll probably break when I try and get it off. this is the finished product. I had to bend the tab here. You have to have a 1.5 millimeter gap between this hose here and the white piece. So you see there's a little gap there. That's required, or the sensor won't work correctly. Let's see what the instructions say. They say to rotate the fuel filter approximately 1.3 inches, move the fuel hose away from the fuel sensor. If the gap is too small, remove the fuel sensor, bend the tab slightly away from the fuel hose until gap is sufficient. That's what I did. So I bent that tab this way. So I'll move it away from the hose there. There's an Allen screw here. There's a tab that goes inside that hole, and then a screw there. So then I tighten all these wires up around the hose with way too many tie wraps, but they give you a lot of wire you have to kind of jam in there. So that's what I did. So it's ready to reassemble into the tank, which I'm sure is going to be a treat now with this big bundle of wires on the top. And I replaced the gasket on the bottom because it came with the kit. The old one probably would have worked fine, but since I have the new one, I'll just use it. So now we'll reassemble the fuel sensor in the tank. And it is a pain. So now I've got these connectors on here. Now they don't want to go back in the hole, so I may have to readjust all my wires on that hose. So it just won't go down in that tab there. So let me try that and we'll try again. So I guess when you're bundling these connectors, don't put them on the side. I guess you got to put them on the top. Okay, so I redid my twist ties, or my wire straps again, and I put one connector on the hose and one connector on the black wire across, and that looks like that's probably going to work. Hopefully it'll fit in the hole. Still have the gap that I need between this and the white sensor and the hose. So I think I'm ready to reinstall again. We'll try it again. If you don't do these things 4 or 5 times, you're lucky. So try and get this in the hole. Now it looks like the sensor's hitting the tank, so let's see if we can, not sure what we can do about that. Well, it's another problem. So now the white sensor that I put in is hitting the side, and I can't get it in the hole. So let's reevaluate again. So I'll get this out and see what I can do. I'm not sure what I can do. It's quite interesting. Puts you in kind of a pickle trying to get everything in here. Alright, well, back to the drawing board. These screws get tightened down between 40 and 45 inch-pounds, which I already did, but just double check them. That's it for this. So now I'll show you where the 200 AB connector is. I can't remember if the connector is A or B, but 2007 Sportster. It's on the left hand side underneath the cover. This is the maxi fuse, the battery. This is the oil tank, and where it is it's right, you see the white connector down in there? That's the actual part we're talking about. So the wire jumper that we assembled before is going to be plugged into that connector. Now there was a black resistor in there before. I had popped that out already. So it's ready to be installed. So I'm going to install that jumper connector on that, and then we can move on to the next step. As you can see, the fuel gauge is working as it should, and we'll test it as we drive, and it goes down lower. We should see it go down. So all in all, it was a successful install. Wasn't that hard. Hardest part was trying to get the wires wrapped around and back into the tank, but other than that, it's pretty easy.